Welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, where we highlight the latest trends in law office and law practice management to help you run your law firm. Brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Institute. You're listening to Legal Talk Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by the Practice Resource Institute on Legal Talk Network. We're so glad you're joining us. This is Christine Bilbrey, and I'm a practice management advisor at PRI and one of the hosts for today's show, which is being recorded from our offices in Tallahassee, Florida. My co-host is Jonathan Israel.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Israel, and I'm the director of the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Institute. Our goal at PRI is to assist Florida attorneys with running the business side of their law practices. We'll be focusing on a different aspect of technology each month, and we'll carry that theme through our newsletter, website, and with related tech tips and articles.
So this month at PRI, our topic is small firm business processes. And joining us today is Rick Georges. Rick is a solo practitioner practicing in St. Petersburg, Florida, and he's best known as the future lawyer. In his column and on his website, he writes about the new technologies changing the practice of law. He's also a poet, author, professor, seminar presenter, and a past chair of the Florida Bar Technology Committee. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Thanks. Welcome to everybody.
So, Rick, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role as the future lawyer.
Okay. I got the future lawyer many years ago when I first started my website, way back before most of you were born in 1994. And I had just seen a movie called Future Cop, and I was looking for a name for my website. And I thought about the fact that I had always been interested in using technology to simplify and make cheaper and more efficient the practice of law. So I said, why not future lawyer? And my editor agreed, and it went from there. I've been practicing solo since 1985. I've been practicing law since 1973. I'm a very old man, but I have a young mind and a face and body made for radio. So thank God this isn't on television. I use technology every single day. Now that I am, I guess, you would call me semi-retired since I'm past retirement age, to avoid overhead, to avoid employees, to avoid, having people all around me all the time that I have to pay salaries to. And I also want to do it cheaply, if possible. I think most lawyers don't realize that they do not have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment and people and processes these days, the days of the internet. And hopefully we can talk a little bit about today some of the things that they can do that are either free or cheap. Call it practicing law on $5 a day.
You should write that book.
Yes.
I was thinking about it, but then again, I'm old and tired.
Yeah. That's great, Rick. Well, if you don't do it, I'm sure one of our listeners may jump on that for us after we hear what you have to say. So, Rick, on that note, obviously being a solo practitioner, you don't have anybody to delegate some of these back-end administrative tasks to. So what is one tool that you could tell our listeners right now that you could not live without, that they should go out and pick up, even if it does cost a little bit, a tool that they could go right now and implement and, help improve or take the load off of some of these back-end administrative tasks that they're having to do and take up all their time?
There are a bunch of them. I could go on forever. If I had to think of one right off the top of my head, it's internet banking and internet accounting. There is no reason why every lawyer should not have Quicken or QuickBooks on their computer connected or linked to their bank. In effect, I have control over my bank accounts, and the typical lawyer has several. If he does probate law, he's got estates that he has to keep track of. Obviously, if you're a real estate lawyer these days, you have to have both a real estate trust account and a general trust account. You have trust accounting guidelines. You have general accounts. You've got this, and I must have 7 or 8 or 10 bank accounts at any given time that I have to keep track of. But with the internet and with any web browser, I use Chrome from Google, but you can use any one. All of the banks now have very secure websites that enable you with the use of an accounting program. I use Quicken. You can use QuickBooks if you want to go full bore. And I basically, every morning, the first thing I do is I link up with the bank, and I know exactly what my financial picture is. So Gone are the days in the old days when we had to write checks manually, or we had to hire a secretary to write checks and mail them out. We can pay our bills online. We can buy things online. We can keep track of our bank accounts online. That probably is the one thing that I use every day, although there are a lot of them. I mean, I could go on and on. Gmail, free Gmail. If you use two-factor authentication on Google, it's just as safe as anything you could do. And we can talk more about what two-factor authentication is later if you want to, but it is secure. Use Google Calendar. It's free. You don't have to buy a calendaring system, although if you have an active litigation practice, you should probably buy a case management program. Those are only $45 or $50 a month per user now for the online versions. Your legal research is free. I mean, the Florida Bar provides access to legal research on Fastcase, which is full bore, all Florida cases everywhere. In the old days, we had to go to a law library. We had to go through an index card. We had to sit down for hours at a table, opening and reading books and cases. And nowadays, it's right there at your fingertips as part of your bar dues. Google Scholar gives you access to case law throughout the United States. You can actually do a research project nowadays that will give you cases from any jurisdiction, and it's all free. Google provides it for free. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah, and these are excellent examples. Well, I want to break it down because you made some good points, so I want to kind of unpack that. Every month I get calls from young attorneys that say, are we allowed to have access to our bank accounts online? And they think that it's something that's not secure. And, I want to stress that they're not allowed to have an ATM debit card attached to their trust account. But I absolutely encourage all of them. And I'm glad you said you know where you're at every day. It's right. A lot harder for you to get in trouble with your trust account if you are checking that on every day. I encourage them to have online access with that. And you made a good point. Since you can pay your bills online, you've gotten rid of the security issue of having someone in your office, they could take your checks and be writing trust checks all over town. So it's actually more secure than the old-fashioned way of doing it.
No question about it. And not only are all bank sites, but many sites now secure. All you have to do is look at your URL line, and if you see that HTTPS with the S on the end, you know that site is secure. Now, is anything 100% secure? Absolutely not, but it's far more secure than having paper checks sitting in a filing cabinet in your office. And many attorneys are not aware that if they have that kind of financial record in their office, it's supposed to be under lock and key when they leave the office. For real estate purposes, you are far more secure nowadays with online banking because, number one, wired funds are going to be able to be used in your closing a lot faster than depositing a check at the bank. Once the wired funds are in, payments that can be made electronically are a lot safer than writing out manual checks, putting them in the mail, and waiting to see if they get received or lost. There are just 100 different ways that online banking and online computing is more secure. Now, on that score, though, I stress that if you're going to use online resources like Gmail or Google Calendar or any one of a number of other services, two-factor authentication is essential. And by that, I mean many secure websites now will provide you with the opportunity when you sign into the website, they send you a passcode on a device that you have in your possession. It can be a cell phone, it can be whatever. But once you have that code, then you manually enter it into the system. You know that somebody else won't be able to get into your Google account because they don't have your cell phone. So I would not do anything without two-factor authentication that deals with confidential client matters or confidential client data or financial information.
Those are great points, Rick. I can't agree more. I mean, it's, the fears of moving to the cloud are really going away quickly with the security that is being built into these applications and the platforms that are out there.
There are all sorts of things you can do online now that you couldn't before. I had a closing this morning where the closing documents are going to be overnighted to me. Tomorrow I have to record. Well, in the old days, sometimes you would mail the deed, mail the mortgage into the recording office. You'd wait a week or two to find out if they got it and they actually recorded it. Or in most cases, you would have to actually get in your car, drive down to the courthouse, hand the documents to the clerk while you're waiting in line. Now, using something like Simplifile, for $4.50, all you have to do is send a copy of the document, scan it, and send it to the Simplifile people. They send it to the clerk, and the clerk records it. You get it back that afternoon with the recording information, and you're done. So many things. And again, people have always told me, well, isn't using the internet insecure? Can't somebody get at your data? Well, yeah, but it's a lot more secure than having all of your security documents and all your confidential information in a locked filing cabinet in your office, and all it takes is one burglar to break the lock on your front door, come in and break the lock on your filing cabinet. They got access to all your documents. This is the same argument I had 20 years ago when I was talking up email. I was at a bar function, and I said, every lawyer should have an email account. And half of them wanted to know, well, what's email? And once I explained what email was, they said, well, you mean you type this stuff and you send it out into the internet? I mean, isn't that insecure? I say, well, let me ask you this. Is it more secure to write confidential client information on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope that is secured by the licking of the envelope, hand the envelope to a postal clerk, and then wait and see and hope that the envelope gets to the people that it's supposed to go to without anybody opening it? I mean, please.
With the word confidential stamped on it.
The magic stamp of confidential.
Sometimes putting confidential stamp on it is like putting a red flag in front of a bull. I mean, that's just an invitation to somebody to open it up. So, again, electronic is better. Electronic isn't perfect. Obviously, there have been hacks. Obviously, hacks are possible. But the bar only requires that you do what with confidential information? Take reasonable precautions within the state of the art to keep the information confidential. You're not required to be the 100% guarantor of security for the rest of your career. That's just not feasible. But again, if you take reasonable security precautions, the internet and computers are as safe as you can be.
Have you made the move to being completely cloud-based?
I am, except since I am a solo and I am semi-retired, I still do my client billing and my client documents on my computer that I keep with me at all times. Although I do email documents securely, I use PDFA so the documents can't be modified. And when I e-file things, you have to use PDFA so that they can't be modified. And I make sure that I verify that they got to the clerk in the form that I sent them. So the answer is I scan everything. So I'm largely paper-free, except I keep paper even after I scan it as a backup. But yeah, I've largely gone to an electronic practice. Like as I said, I do email, calendaring, legal research, public records access, e-recording, online banking, online trust accounting. I publicize the practice through my blog and social media, which is a whole other discussion about how to advertise for free or cheap. You develop an online persona and you will get much, much faster and broader recognition than you would ever get with a Yellow Pages ad or a newspaper ad.
Have you experimented with any of the electronic signing software programs yet?
I did. Yeah, I looked at DocuSign, and the problem that I saw with those is most of them require a larger monthly minimum than I, as a solo, were prepared to pay. I just don't have that much. Although, if you take a look at your typical real estate broker now, they're all using it because they do a whole lot of online signing. I don't have a problem with online signing. Given the legal ramifications of client counseling, however, I am a lot more comfortable with a face-to-face with a client discussing a document that they're going to sign than I am emailing it to them and expecting them to read and sign and know what questions to ask me. So I'm not all there on document signing on the internet, although in the proper circumstances, sure, why not?
And you make a good point there that so many of these things add a lot of convenience for an attorney, but you don't want to lose the personal touch of actually being there and guiding your client. So I'm glad that you bring that up.
Yeah, it's not just that. If you're not counseling your client face-to-face or person-to-person, then you risk not only losing that personal touch, but you also risk losing the client or having an unhappy client saying, why didn't you tell me this? Why didn't you tell me that? Why didn't you tell me that if I signed this thing that this would happen? So I try never to, I discuss these things via secure email with clients, and I'll discuss them in detail, and I'll give them a long email with a point-by-point analysis of a particular document, and then I answer their questions via email. But I never, ever, ever allow them to sign something without having a phone conversation or a face-to-face conversation discussing the document before they sign it.
That's good. Which program are you using to make sure that your email is secure? Are you using an encrypted program, or is it just one of the Gmail, the higher level Gmail accounts?
No, I use the straight Gmail, but for encryption stuff, I use ProtonMail, which is encrypted from computer to computer and back.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Did you hear that?
We do.
I taught my Alexa device to respond to the phrase COMPUTER, and when I just used that phrase, she woke up. See, sometimes computers, there I did it again, they do things that we don't expect them to do. But there are certain communications that you absolutely want to keep confidential, and those I use encrypted email. And there are a bunch of them out there. They're easy to find, and they're not. The ProtonMail is free.
And does that go right into your Gmail, like a little plugin? Is that how it works, or is it a separate program you have to?
It's a separate program. Now, that's another thing, too, as far as mobile devices. Mobile devices are really dangerous places to keep confidential data. But the mobile devices that we use sometimes can be hacked. And as we've seen in the news, if somebody gets possession of them, they can be gotten into. So the first thing I tell lawyers about mobile devices like phones is make sure the phone is encrypted. Make sure that access to it is done by an actual code, a number code, a series of numbers that have to be manually inputted. Do not ever use the fingerprint scanner, and everybody says that's so secure. Well, the problem with that is that you can be forced to give up your fingerprint. It's a physical attribute, and you cannot be forced to say something that's in your mind that might tend to incriminate you, not that you would do anything criminal. But you got to be very careful about keeping all of the contents of the phone encrypted. You have to be very careful about blocking access to the phone. And again, everything you use should be two-factor authenticated.
And the two-factor authentication is a big deal. I mean, we've seen that just with banks, but attorneys need to get more in touch with that. And I also like the point that you're making about the fingerprint thing. That's come up more and more. And when you realize that your fingerprints are all over your phone, someone who knows what they're doing, you've already given them the passcode for your phone. So I, in fact, just turned that off yesterday.
That's exactly accurate. I had not thought of that issue. I have thought of the issue of you can be forced to give up anything that is a physical attribute by an authority, and you may not want to do that, especially if you got confidential information. Now, you could always claim privilege, but that's not going to stop them from going in. And most of the stuff that you have on your phone is just as privileged as the things that you have in your files. And most attorneys, I had this problem with all of my Facebook friends, my family and my friends. They're always getting hacked. And I say, there is no excuse to be hacked on Facebook. There is just no excuse, because all you have to do is turn on two-factor authentication, and all of these people from all of these countries that try to break into your Facebook system don't have your phone, so they aren't going to be able to hack you. But, you can talk to your blue in the face, and 3 or 4 times a year I'll write a post on security, and I'll just say there are some simple things that you can do that will stop 99% of these intrusions. But people just don't want to be inconvenienced. And it's inconvenient to have to go look for a two-factor code. It takes more time. You have to remember a password. And that's another thing. You should never memorize passwords. You should use complicated passwords. You don't use your birthday. You don't use your mom's maiden name. The password should contain uppercase characters, lowercase characters, both numbers and alphanumerics. And it should be something that you are able to remember, but you shouldn't have to. I believe in password managers. That's another good thing you can do. But we can talk about security for about 5 hours also.
That's
all
true.
of the stuff I've discussed, by the way, is free. There are some paid apps that I use every day. I'm a real property lawyer primarily, so I use a West product called ProDoc. ProDoc is available in Texas, Florida, and California, and it is basically a document assembly program that has all of the forms that you need in various areas of the law. And what you do is you answer expert questions, and they create a basic document for you to use as a base. That really can speed up for a solo or a small firm practitioner the creation of very complex documents. That costs between $125 and $500 a month, depending on what you subscribe to. But that's a very good program.
I love ProDoc. I think that even for solos or brand new attorneys, I think that they're scared off by the price. But depending on what area of law you practice in, it's amazingly affordable when you look at what you would have to pay a full-time paralegal, and it gets rid of so many errors. People that are still relying on a form bank. Yeah.
One transaction will pay for itself.
Absolutely.
Wills and trust drafting. I mean, a lot of that is boilerplate. And you can spend a whole lot more time counseling the client and finding out what their needs are if you don't have to sit down and laboriously draft a whole lot of documents that contain errors. Now, that said, there's such a thing called the computer malpractice. Once very early in my career, maybe 30 years ago, before computers, I had drafted a will, and I was using automatic typewriters then. And because of the addition of one word, I forget what it was, no or non or something, it totally reversed the meaning of the document. And I went ahead and filed the will for probate, and come to find out that the will said something totally opposite of what my client had wanted. So that took me about 6 months to fix. And it taught me a very important lesson. No matter what kind of a document your computer creates or your document automation software creates, it is absolutely essential that you read every single word and think about every single word in the document, no matter how long it is, and that you don't use it as a substitute for your legal judgment. Because if you do, sometimes computers will spit out things that you do not want them to say. And I call that computer malpractice. But again, you got to be very careful when you use these tools that you don't let them substitute for your own judgment.
That's a good point. The over-reliance on the technology can get you in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, and while I'm on the subject, best resource is free. Well, technically it's free. You pay for it with your dues, the Florida Practice Resource Institute. You have more stuff online at the Florida Bar website than most lawyers know exists, but they don't use it. They don't go there. So I'm always telling lawyers, go to the PRI site and look at what they have. They have source material, they have forms, they have all sorts of recommendations about technology and the law. And if you're not using that, you're wasting your bar dues.
We appreciate that plug.
Very much. And on a similar note to that, Rick, a lot of the technologies and things that you listed today, like the ProDoc and the Fast Case, we just want to reiterate that those are available as a benefit to our members through our member benefits program. So, go out there and research what's available to you.
Hey, when I was going to law school in 1970, we would spend hours in the library going through index cards and card catalogs, learning the Dewey Decimal System, going through thousands and thousands of books, pulling down the book, shepherdizing manually, and looking for cases in books. And these young lawyers today, they have no concept of how good they've got it. And they have no concept of how easy it is to do legal research today because they never had to do it the hard way. That's another reason why I believe it's kind of like teaching a kid to add and subtract and not making them do it on paper and pencil, giving them a calculator. There is something to be learned by doing things manually before you jump into allowing a computer to do it for you. I think we need to do more of that. But again, that's just an old man talking about old things.
Well, what's one of your favorite high-tech gadgets? I know that you're a gadget guy. What's something that you're using? I know that we heard your Alexa talking to you, but what else do you really love right now? It
depends on which one I've bought lately. I'm buying them all the time. I explained to my wife that it's better I'm spending money on that than some other things that we could talk about. My most recent purchase was Saturday, actually. I have a collection of smartwatches, and I've been intrigued by them since they first came out a couple of years ago, and I've pretty much bought one of every smartwatch that's become available. And I had, until recently, I was using the Samsung Gear S3 Frontier because it had a phone chip in it, but it uses the Tizen OS, which is pretty much an orphan OS that Samsung uses, whereas most modern smartwatches now in the Android area where I am are Android Wear. Well, the new version of Android Wear 2.0 just came out on Saturday, and I bought the LG Watch Sport, which contains everything you could ever want in a smartwatch. It actually is a smartwatch phone. It has a phone chip. It's got GPS sensors. It's got an NFC chip so you can use Android Pay with it. It is fast. The battery lasts 2 days. It's got a great big beautiful screen. And the thing I like most is that it operates independently of the cell phone. So you program it with your phone. But if you leave your phone like I do in the cradle all day, I can hop in the car and I still get all my texts, my emails. I can make phone calls. I can do pretty much anything with the watch that you can do with a smartphone. So that's my favorite gadget. But
I didn't realize you could,
because I've only had,
and you can leave your phone behind. I didn't know that was a thing already.
Yeah.
That's great.
See, a lot of people kept telling me, well, why does a smartwatch need a phone chip? Well, it needs a phone chip because with a phone chip, it acts like a smartphone. It has access to all of the same things that a smartphone does. So if it has its own phone chip, it can still link to the phone if you have the phone. But Android Wear 2.0 now is a standalone. It has its own apps. You can download apps on the watch. With the phone chip, it can do anything that the phone can do. And that brings me to another thing you can do for free, and that's get a Google Voice number. I've had one for several years. My office phone is really kind of extraneous right now, although I have kept it. But any call to my office phone is automatically forwarded to my Google Voice number, which is a lifetime free number that Google gives you for free. That number, then, you can forward to any number of phones or devices. So I forward my Google Voice number to all of my smartwatches and all of my smartphones simultaneously. So whenever somebody calls me on the office, whatever device I happen to have handy, I can take the call on. So the fact that these smartwatches have phone chips in them, that they are phone enabled, means that I can actually practice law on my wrist if I don't have my phone handy. Some people say you don't need a phone chip in your watch. I say it's essential, especially if you want to be in touch wherever you are. In effect, this is what I've been looking for the past 25 years, and that is the ability to practice law with just me. You know, walking around with this little watch on my wrist, I literally can take calls, emails, texts. I can do legal research. I can use the GPS to find my way to the courthouse. I can do whatever I need to do. Admittedly, it's tougher on a small screen, but the point is that the technology is there if you need it.
I love that. I didn't know about that watch. Now I'm going to have to go out and get one. Jonathan wears his Apple Watch, but yours sounds cooler now. So
way cooler. I'm kind of a little jealous.
Apple is brain dead. Apple doesn't even have a watch with a phone chip in it.
Sacrilege over there.
Uh-oh. These are fighting words.
I bought one for my son for Christmas, and it really, I couldn't stand it. I was paying $200 more for the damn thing than it's worth. And it doesn't even have a phone chip in it. I told my son, I said, what is it about this Apple Watch? And I guess, I don't know, millennials just seem to like Apple for some reason.
Well, you've given us so many good tips today, and we're going to list those on our website. But it looks like we've come to the end of our program, and I want to thank Rick Georges for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So if our listeners have questions or wish to follow up with you, how can they reach you?
Good question. Go to futurelawyer.com. And there's a search box there. So anything I've written about in the last 15 or 20 years, which is just about anything technology-oriented that a lawyer might be interested in, just type in the search term, and it's like searching Google, and you'll find all of my posts. You can phone me, email me. You can go to Google+. You can go to Twitter. You can go anywhere and ask a question, and I will answer it for free. I've been doing that for lawyers for a long, long time. And I'm happy to do it for any member of the bar or anybody that really listens to these podcasts. The problem I see is getting these podcasts to the people that need it, and they're the ones that aren't using it. So same thing with Danny Aller and the social media of the Florida Bar. I'd like to put in a plug-in for him at the Florida Bar, at TheFlabar. Danny Aller runs that social media department for the Florida Bar. That's the best way to keep in touch with what's going on at the bar, because he writes about it every single day. You can reach me on Google+, at Rick Georges. You can reach me on Facebook, Future Lawyer Rick Georges at Facebook. And you can email me at rickgeorges@gmail or rgeorges@futurelawyer.com.
Great, thank you. So this has been another edition of the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by the Practice Resource Institute on Legal Talk Network. I'm Christine Bilbrey.
And I'm Jonathan Israel. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Institute and produced by the broadcast professionals at Legal Talk Network. If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com, subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find the Florida Bar, the Florida Bar Practice Research Institute, and Legal Talk Network on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Or download the free app from Legal Talk Network in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.